Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So yeah, Sarah and Ava away from the ship, trying to find a venue for the wedding and everything, and it's like, well, of course, at moments like this is when shenanigans are going to end up going into overdrive. I actually thought we would have probably done more with the Gus thing, but really quickly, I love the fact is that, like, on one side of things, we have all that going down. It's Spooner being like, I'm not going to be Gary's translator and stuff like that, or translating every, like, thing out of Gus's mouth. She's like, if I wanted to babysit, I would have married the first guy that I kissed back in Texas. And I love Zari's like, yep, she's definitely a new person on the ship, you know? Because, it's like, I love, like, even, like, Zari recording it, to let Ava and Sarah know everything's copacetic on the ship. It's like, right, while these, like, three idiots do their thing while she's away, but they're all serenading Gus to keep him calm and everything. I also love, like, oh, yeah, I know you're kind of new here, new Zari. She's like, actually, I'm the OG. And then, like, Virod's like, OZ. And Nate's like, the one and only. Also, Gary lost his glasses, so he's stuck in his alien form most of the episode. Which is interesting, I guess, because obviously the newest member was Astra, and which is so interesting, because, like, she's not on the ship most of the time, so Spooner is technically more of a veteran on being at least kind of part of the Legends than Astra is when you actually think about it, but nevertheless, I was worried we weren't going to get to see, like, Gus kind of grown up. They were saying, like, he's in his, like, teenage phase, and he started running amok, and the Legends had to work together, and they were getting their asses handed to them. It took a combination of Rory trying to get Lita to the medic bay because he thought she was in labor, which I was like, I figured she would have said something about her water breaking if she really was in labor. The fact that she went like, oh my god, I'm in labor, or like, you usually have that first step of like, my water broke. I thought that, I was like, oh, I guess we're just going to skip over. I guess that was kind of the point to be like, oh yeah, she was, I guess that was kind of an early sign that she was faking. I don't know. Usually that's what comes out first, like, oh my god, my water broke, then we get into those, But, it took a combination of the Totem Twins, activate. I was like, oh, is that supposed to be like a little wink and nod to like the Wonder Twins? I wonder. But them combined with Rory's gun ended up blasting Gus somewhere. I'm like, we never got an explanation of where Gus was. Also, I guess that's the whole shtick about, I guess because he's very Gremlin-like in the sense that it's like, oh, like you look all cute and fuzzy, and then like you turn monster. It's like, I guess that's kind of the whole point, because Gus went from cute to behemoth monstrous, and that's supposed to be the teen phase, isn't? Not less it rapidly aged, and what we saw was actually adulthood. I don't know, but I'm like, we're going to completely ignore the fact is that we dropped Gus or sent Gus somewhere. I'm like, I'd assume that was somewhere where it was like, nah, it's okay, because they never worry about that. So I'm wondering where they left Gus. But obviously, like, Mick's dealing with the whole aspect of like, right, being like, he's in denial about the pregnancy thing. And, Lita wants him to kind of get checked out, because she brings up the fact is like, right, a year and a half ago, my past, your future, you disappeared. And she wonders if like Kayla's babies, like in like being impregnated, like maybe that has something to do with it. But we also kind of find out why Mick is just kind of okay with whatever happens to him, because he blames himself. He's like Kayla, he really cared for her, and also it's like, I left her behind. It's like, obviously, it was a situation of like, I had to survive. He was getting back with everyone, but also he had to make sure he survived so he could get back to Lita. So his guilt over that is what's kind of, I think that's also maybe another reason of being in denial too, because like, right, why could I have this thing from, it's like a parting gift from Kayla, and I wasn't there for her when she needed me. You never leave your partner behind. That's kind of like the number one rule. Because I think also, like, let's not forget, like, he's lost a partner before, Snart. So I guess like maybe like some residuals from that kind of resonate through of like, right, like losing your partner, like it's never the easiest thing, and it's been a long time since he had to kind of go through that necessarily. I mean, granted, he's had some losses amongst the legends. Obviously, like Stein being like the last like death, other just being like people leaving, you know. So, but Lita obviously lied about the whole being pregnant thing just to get him medic bay, and obviously it's like, yeah, despite having like 48 babies inside of his head, him having a headache is, you know, actually kind of abnormal. So I'm wondering, is it just because Mick is Mick, that's why it's not causing him as much trouble as it should? But then Gary comes in, he's got the glasses, Sarah and Ava show up, and it's like, oh my god, look at these little guys. It's like, yeah, it's like, you know, Lita's like, you know, it's not just Kayla they're taking after Mick as well, being tough. It's like, right, they need you just like I need you, so you need to survive, not just for my sake but their sake as well, you know, because Kayla would want you to look after, I'm sure Kayla will be happy knowing that you're looking after her babies. Once again, I doubt Kayla's dead. I wonder, is she like Queen Bee of the clones, and is she going to return with a vengeance? Does she know that she laid eggs inside of Mick? Maybe she did. I highly doubt we're done with Kayla. And once again, I'm assuming she's gonna pop up. Like I brought up, I don't know whether it's gonna be like, oh, like as you know, revenge, or whether it's just gonna be like, I tracked you down. We'll see. I'm surprised we're still not having conversations about like, right, that was Gary's fiance. Like we brought those conversations up at the beginning of the season. We just kind of dropped that. Like, is there going to be repercussions for the fact is that you guys aren't together? Like, what's going to happen there? Once again, Mick's story is going to be interesting to look at over the course of this season. But other than that, we had an interesting pairing. Well, first and foremost, Constantine getting information from Alistair, because he ends up retrieving the map because a vampire, Noelle, was holding onto it. Which, I'm like, is she the first vampire we've dealt with in the Arrowverse? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I feel like yes. I don't think we've dealt with any vampires before now, but I could be wrong. So there's that side of things. Obviously, Constantine is still fronting because it's like, yeah, I've got this magic. So, like, yeah, you step out of line, like, I'll activate this spell and it'll be like daylight in here, you'll be burned. But she's like, fine. And leaves not only the map, but also like a vial. Basically, it's the magic equivalency, I guess, of steroids. Magical juicing. Of like, yeah, like Crowley used it back in the day when he was trying to find the fountain to no avail. And so I was wondering if he was going to join up with Zari. I wonder, does he know like Zari 1.0 is around and not his Zari? But yeah, he joins up with Spooner because she will lead him to the fountain. So they head to Spain in 1939 in this particular town. And at this point, like, the town had just been through a civil war for after 3 years, and it's like one side of it is like, I think when like the military in particular, or like Nazis were backing one side, and the other side was being backed by other people. So it's like, and then obviously there's a conversation like the Catholics, which Spooner was like, you know, I'm Catholic, and he was like, yeah, so you understand why I would rather sit down with a demon than a priest. But they go in because they're looking for El Gato, the cat, because he's believed to be someone that has, on more than one occasion, survived death in, like, in miraculous ways. So it's like, right, he must have found the fountain. And John lied his way into being like, oh yeah, like I'm assuming because it's like, well, the benefit of being from the future, you have past knowledge, which you wouldn't expect. I mean, I guess you wouldn't realize that. I mean, it's not necessarily like smart, but more crafty. You kind of underestimate John's knowledge in certain cases because you wouldn't think he'd know that. But I guess like when you've studied magic as long as he has, maybe it's just kind of like a natural part of like, right, you learn a little bit about history as well. I don't know. Maybe he's just well read, you know. So maybe I got to start giving Constantine more credit on just like how book smart he is or something like that, for him to know exactly what to say to get Elgato to be on his side by being like, oh yeah, like how they ended up managing, like, greasing their weapons on the battlefield. But it turns out he has a nephew, Fernando, who is connected to all of this. I thought was interesting, like, there's I'm going to butcher it, the name, but I'm not going to say it, but it's like, he was reading a book that had, like, a very, like, specific character. Like, it almost seemed like a, like, Zorro-esque character, and then you had Constantine, like, oh, she looks kind of like a very funny Constantine. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to be a wink and nod to like Spooner's character from like the comics, because I don't know if she's a character from the comics. I think this show's been pretty accurate with like, because I feel like I think Supergirl might be the only show that's like created a character. I mean, that's probably not the case, but at least that I'm aware of like a mainstay character, like a main character being created, that being Nia. She's like specific to the show. But I'm wondering, I haven't looked into Spooner at all, so I don't know if she's from the comics or not. And if so, I wonder, is that what that's supposed to be, a wink and nod to, like, is that what her character is like in the actual comics or something? I don't know. I'm curious. I'm going to do some research afterwards, looking into it. I kind of, because I'm also worried about, like, if I do that, though, I might spoil certain things. We'll see. Because even interesting later on, he also brings up the JSA, which I'm like, oh yeah, let's not forget they were active around this time and stuff like that. So, because he was asking later on, like, oh, like, because Spooner was like, don't worry, superheroes are going to show up, and he's like, oh, that character from the book he was reading, or like the JSA. She's like, not as famous names, but yeah, because it turns out there's a captain who came there who works with, serving Hitler and everything, who's looking for the fountain himself. I did think it was interesting that that captain was like, oh yeah, like I've researched like the Spear of Destiny and the Loom of Fate, things that the Legends has crossed paths with when it comes to the more magical scale of things. And so I'm like, yeah, from a historical standpoint, obviously Hitler sucked, but it was interesting that, like, I believe that is historically accurate, that like Hitler did have research, like scientists and stuff, and people researching the occult. Like, he was fascinated by it and stuff like that. So I always thought that was kind of an interesting aspect of history. But it turns out that it's not Elgato necessarily that's, the kind of immortal or whatever amongst the group is actually his nephew Fernando, who heals him. So at first I was like, oh, I thought he was the fountain, because there is like an alien energy coming from him. Which is interesting to know. That it's still crazy, that baffles me too, that like, right, we're dealing with like alien magic. I wonder what's the difference between alien magic and just regular human magic. It makes you wonder, like, did magic on Earth actually originate from aliens? Is it actually kind of the same thing, but it's been on Earth for so long that it's just associated with human magic, or is there going to be a distinction between that and alien magic? Just kind of interesting. And it kind of makes me think of like, oh, what's the difference between alien Power Rangers and regular Power Rangers? I know it's a weird reference to make, but it's like what just popped in my head, because I was like, hey, I remember as a kid really digging like the whole alien Power Ranger thing. I mean, hell, there was even a whole Power Ranger series about being in space, traveling, in space and stuff. Like, it's interesting to think about. But it's like, is there much difference? Not really. At least I don't, to my recollection. So, other than, that, obviously Constantine playing the role of a priest, which obviously he revealed he has such disdain for, so that was interesting. Pretending to connect Spooner's mind with Fernando because of her alien thing, because of his power and everything. He's mute, but she could communicate with him. And obviously, like, basically on the battlefield, an angel came to him and told him to drink from the fountain, so he knows where it is. But obviously, it turns into a shootout there, and so they end up bailing. Spooner wants to go back before Constantine is like, right, they don't win this side of the war, like the fascists kind of win, so like there's not much we can do, like historically, like like things are the way they are. And it's like he's all about getting his magic, which Spooner's like, I don't get it, like, why are you so obsessed with it? And for him, it's like from his life of like, capitalism getting blamed on, what was he saying, that someone with blonde skin, the fact of the matter is you're considered a degenerate if you like both, fancy both men and women, and then having a dad who beats the crap out of you when he gets home because his dad beat the crap out of him. And for Constantine, the life he lived in, because obviously he's a rebel by nature, like he's a very punk rock type of dude, and I think his magic was his escape. His escape from like the rules of life beating you down, like you're just caught up in just like having to like accept the rules of life. But magic gave him an outlet where it's like, right, I'm powerful enough to warp the rules, to break the rules. I'm a rule breaker by nature. And so for him, it's like, without that magic, I'm no, because his magic for him has defined him for so long. It's always been a part of him, and it's like losing a part of himself now that he doesn't have his magic. So he's willing to go above and beyond for it. But by the time they go to the fountain, it's dried up, it's gone. So he plans on getting Spooner to help him transfer Fernando's magic, because it's like, right, he wants to be normal. So this, and she's like, don't give me that spiel. Like, don't act like this is for his sake. This is for your sake. He's like, right, I'm a tosser. Like, I'm a wanker. Like, I suck. But truth be told is, give him a choice at the end of the day. What does he want? Like, because Spooner talks about she'd give anything to be normal herself. But it's like, right, the moment you get magic, get the magic, he wanted Constantine to help him find his mom who's been missing. Which I thought it was really interesting that Spooner was able to kind of transfer the magic. Which, I mean, I think that's so fascinating. I mean, I guess it is technically alien magic inside of him, so that's why Spooner was able to kind of do what she was able to do. But I thought I initially was surprised that it just disappeared. I thought it was actually going to go inside of Spooner, and I thought that would have been just kind of like, well, the ultimate irony is that nobody gets it, that it just disappears. So I guess that's kind of the ultimate middle finger to John, because it's about giving it to someone that's worthy, and John has proved himself, that he's not. So with the soldier sewing up, he did the only thing he could. Like, I have no magic, so he drinks the potion and kind of turns into an evil maniac when he just like is laughing and kind of like, it's like an acid trip moment of him just like using his magic and like killing them. And especially the captain, he ends up killing him in the most brutal way. Like, I'm assuming that's like because you hear his heart beating faster and faster, so I'm assuming like either you made his heart explode or you crushed it or something. And then you have Spooner see like, wow, like what he did. And it's like, seeing John like that was scary, but even John being like, yeah, it scared me too. So at the end, they kind of walked away not getting what they wanted. So, but at the end of the day, Fernando returns to his uncle. He's normal and everything. And it's like, granted, they're not going to win. Like, obviously, stuff is going to be tough for them. But, I think probably the conversations about Fernando looking for his mom probably got Spooner thinking about the fact of looking for hers as well. Because for her, it's like Fernando, never gave up, and she kind of did. And she makes her go like, I wish I hadn't given up on my mom when she was taken and never came back. Like, and she wonders if it's too late. But, you have Constantine like remind her, it's like, right, you're on a spaceship that time travels. Like, it's never too late. There's no like ever like running out of time thing. But at the end, Constantine made his decision that, like, obviously for him, it's like he needs magic. It's always been his addiction. But now it's like, right, no matter what the cost, like, he uses his powers to make Spooner. Is like, right, if the team asks, we're going to say that we found a fountain. That's why I have my magic. You're not going to tell Zara. You're not going to tell the team. So it's okay. And he just tells her to kind of sleep it off. And when she wakes up, like, that's all she'll remember. So obviously Crowley's like, oh, look at you, you're juicing. He's like, yeah, shut up. And gives Alistair to Noel to sell. It's like, right. And because of that, it's like in exchange you get a couple vials of magic. So we've seen the dark side of that. I mean, magic's always had a dark side, but this is even darker side, because Constantine said it himself that, like, Crowley, you and I know that this magic comes with a price, and I'm assuming it probably burns away at your soul, which it'd be interesting if that ended up being the case of, like, it is a type of magic that, like, burns away your soul. Like, I always think it's a weird thing, but, like, I always think that's such an interesting, like, element of, like, when something, like, literally costs you your soul. I mean, kind of like, I'm about to say, like, what recently had that? And I was like, oh, Jack from Supernatural, like, his powers were tied to his soul, so the more he used his powers, the more it burned away his soul. Like, I'm wondering, is it going to be something like that? Or it could be that, but more so in the form of what we saw in this episode. He kind of goes a little more mad and becomes a very evil version of John Constantine. We'll have to wait and see what kind of effects does it have, like, probably, after continued use. Like, of course you're not going to be able to stop after just one hit. Of course it's going to, I think that's, the addictive properties of this whole thing, but once again, just proof of just how addictive magic can be, and just how much of an addict John Constantine is when it comes to magic regardless. So he has a whole bunch of vials. He was able to exchange, Alistair for them, which Noel's going to, oh yeah, like, I'm going to sell him to, like, obviously it's like, oh, no, you don't know who she's going to sell my soul to and everything, but I'm like, so you got these now, but it's like, what's the next batch going to cost you? It's going to be a hefty price, I'm assuming. So, and the question then becomes, is Constantine ready to pay it? You know, he might not be in the right mind state, and he might jump at the opportunity to pay whatever price it is. And it's almost kind of like, I mean, you know, I always think it's interesting when stories like The Magicians kind of treat magic kind of like a drug. And in this particular case, he got that free hit, and then like, right, you have to pay now. Like, so there is a definite parallel in that regard. But I'm very interested to see what happens with Constantine's story as we go, you know, down this dark side things for him. What the next episode where it takes us, as well as just where the rest of the season takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good